Welcome to our YouTube channel. We're so glad that you found us. Please enjoy this inspiring interview with Jeff Bailey, where he was interviewed by Reverend Cyndi Krupp. You can find out more about Jeff Bailey on his website, avitayogaonline.com. For more information on our non-dual community and the free resources we provide, we invite you to visit our website at awakening-together.org. We hope you enjoy the satsang and hope to see you live in our sanctuary.
Well, I got emotional. You know, the first time I met Jeff, I didn't know who or what he was. I was doing a series of YouTube live interviews for a Pure Presence conference, and he was on my list. And it was 10 minutes before I met him that I read his bio, and I had no clue who he was or what he was going to be in my life. And 10 minutes into, if it even took that long, I started crying. I started crying, which was extraordinary. And I know absolutely that typically happens when I step into something. It's not all that different than what happened when I met Jacqueline. Sort of like the same experience. I was going to read what I read this morning. I'm going to read bits and pieces of an email that Jeff sent to his community this morning, tell you a little bit more about how Jeff has changed my life, and then hand things over to Jeff. So welcome to our first satsang for 2024. It's my great blessing to bring you Jeff Bailey. Jeff has spent a great deal of time in the world of yoga and spiritual growth. He's been studying A Course in Miracles since 1990, and his approach to yoga is all about healing and finding peace. He recently started a new series in the sanctuary on January 10th called The Yoga Mind, and is also leading a retreat, which Shauna was just talking about, named Healing Through Yoga and Prayer. Whether you've been doing yoga for years or just starting, Jeff's style is supportive and accessible to everyone. And I can tell you that's true. I even sent my sister to him. Jeff's the founder of Avita Yoga and has been into yoga since 1985. His background in anatomy and physiology really shines through his teaching, making yoga easy to understand and benefit from. Jeff believes yoga can heal almost anything and brings a lot of joy and understanding to his practice. Now, those were our words. This morning, I opened an email from Jeff that he sent to his community, where he invited his community to join us. He calls me a dedicated Avita Yoga student. I've taken over 900 hours of classes. I guess it's all online, so I'm guessing that Jeff went in and took a look. But I've spent about an hour every day for the last over 3 years. So it's closing in on 1,000 hours of listening to Jeff teach in my ear and following his directions. And there's been a lot of release in my body. And if it comes up, we could talk about that too. But there's no question that I am more relaxed. I am more open. The pain levels in my body have decreased probably well over 90%. There are getting closer to realigning my pelvis from a car accident in 1983, which blows me away. I can literally, within the yoga practice itself, I can now feel it's almost like a chip in the pelvis when I move my hip, which is wild. And through direct experience, Jeff points to the fact that we can literally remodel our bones. And I'm now watching that happen. There's also a lot of the spasming that's been in my face and the left side of my body from to Bell's palsy in the last dozen years. A lot of that spasming has just gone away. My face is much more relaxed and more open, and I don't even do the yoga for those physical changes anymore. Jeff promises his community, and so us, that he'll share his story and the miracles along the way that led to this moment. He's going to be very open for questions and conversation and dialogue. And there's a little bit in here about, perhaps some easy shapes, depending on what questions you've asked. I can tell you, I've been in a lot of different meetings, and I am now in Jeff's yoga teacher training. So I've heard a lot of his teaching, and if you ask for help right here, right now, I imagine he's going to have something wonderful to share. So don't be shy. It's a very special moment. And with that, Jeff, what is alive in you that you'd like to share right now about your story? I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yeah. Wow, Cyndi, thank you so much. Yeah, it's so fun to open with you here and open with the Awakening Together community. It's beautiful how our roads have come together, our paths have come together, and now we're kind of sharing with each other's community, and you're in the teacher training and all that. So wow, what a blessing to be here. Thank you all very much. And so in the bi-monthly half-hour talks that I'm doing will center mostly around resourcing A Course in Miracles and what it means to join. And this is my favorite topic. I touched upon it a little bit in the opening half hour that I did with the topic, the yoga mind, because the whole world is obsessed with yoga bodies. And yoga has always been about the mind. And so at the age of, I'm just going to recap a little bit of that, because it's a nice setup for where we want to go here with ultimately with healing. And all healing happens at the level of the mind. And of course, I had no clue about that. I didn't know that when I accidentally, well, there are no accidents. I say accidentally because I can't tell you how I ended up in this yoga class. I must have seen a flyer somewhere, but all I remember at this point in time is walking out of the class. And I remember feeling so open and so kind of alive because of the yoga on the body. My mind just opened up. And after most of the students walked out of the room, I asked the teacher, I said, what does yoga mean? What did we just do? And he said, well, yoga means to join. And I said, what does yoga mean to join? Why did we just spend all this time pulling ourselves apart, stretching, when yoga means to join? It just didn't add up. And so that became a mantra, a koan of sorts that I'd seemingly given myself, but we know that the separate self gives nothing to itself. So it was years and years later that I realized Spirit had me walk through that door. Spirit had me experience that class. Spirit gave me that question. And I never stopped asking that question. It was one of the deepest moments of my entire life. I traveled quite a bit through my 20s, and I landed in lots of different yoga classes with lots of different teachers, and still asked that question. And nearly a decade later, 8 years later, I found myself back in Colorado. I'd spent a lot of time on the East Coast. I led bicycle tours for a living for quite a while. And so it let me travel around, and it let me share yoga with all kinds of willing people. We'd stop for lunch in beautiful, beautiful settings. And I'd start doing a bit of yoga, and everybody'd come over and start doing some yoga. And this was back in the 80s. So many people hadn't even heard the term. So it was fun just watching people open up from this simple practice. And then I remember, actually, I'm going to go into some kind of fun detail because I told you I'd share some miracle moments. So one of the miracle moments was, I believe I was leading a bicycle trip in the Shenandoah Valley. So we went down south sometimes. And I remember schlepping luggage. So we carried everybody's luggage up the stairs. We'd put it in their room and do all kinds of nice things for the guests. We'd air up their tires every morning, stuff like that. So I remember schlepping all the luggage. It was hot. I was dripping in sweat. And it was about an hour or so before dinner was going to be served. And I started doing my yoga. It just became this routine. I started doing my yoga. And there came that voice again. And I didn't really know, I'd gone to college and I was supposed to be making it in the world. And I was having a lot of fun leading bicycle tours and sharing a little bit of yoga, but hadn't a clue what I wanted to do with my life. And there came that voice and said, yoga is going to be a part of your life. Yoga is going to bring meaning to your life. It just came in. The words, I can't say exactly what the words were, but the feeling was so strong and it felt so reassuring. But then part of me said, really? How is that ever going to be? But it was just, it was a recollection. And those are miracle moments. That is spirit coming in, deep, deep intuitive feeling. And the Course says, or Jesus says in the Course, the right use of feeling is using it to determine your state of mind. Is it joyous? Is it happy? Is it moving in a loving direction? Or is it fearful? Is it painful? Is it seemingly going nowhere? So that feeling comes through, and then we trust that. And that's the yoga. So in about 1990, I got the prompt to move back to Colorado. And I grew up in Gunnison, spent a lot of time in nearby Crested Butte. I grew up in the mountains. My dad was a veterinarian, and so I had my hands quite literally in everything, delivering calves with him at 4 o'clock in the morning in 30 below degree weather, and just watching the steam come off of a newborn calf, and knowing from at the age of 9 or 10 years old, what I needed to do to help my dad in these situations. It was just, I became so resourced in the body and animals and the physiology. And I know the feeling of muscle tissue in my hands. And that gave me this sort of deep physiological understanding of what muscles do and don't do. And I can tell you right now, muscles do not stretch. And that's why I kind of intuitively, I think, questioned the joining quality of yoga right from the beginning. So anyway, I ended up back in Boulder, Colorado, grew up in Gunnison, went to college in Durango, and I thought, okay, Boulder's going to be a nice place to decide to live. So I lived there. And almost immediately I wanted to leave. I just wanted to travel again. I had become almost addicted to travel. And I was just about to make the decision to do that, not even having a clue where I was going to go, when the voice came in again. And it said, sit, stay, don't you go anywhere, because this Boulder is going to be your healing. You're going to heal here. And again, I'm paraphrasing a feeling that came through. And so just months later, there I am on the floor doing my yoga again. I look up on the shelf, and there on the shelf are those 3 books. In the early 80s, they had bound them separately. So I pulled one of them off the shelf, opened it up, and the words to join just jumped off the page. And that's when I really knew, oh, wow, this was another miracle moment. Just because I had trusted this subtle but profound intuitive feeling. And that led me to Unity Church, where I immediately enrolled in a Course in Miracles study group. It opened my mind up just enough to have a meaningful relationship, which is something I'd always wanted, but just couldn't seem to hold together. opened my mind up just enough for that. And then lo and behold, weeks later, met my now wife, Lori Kimmett, and she too was in a similar situation. So Spirit brought us together because we were both asking to be healed. We were both kind of coming out of relationships that didn't really work, or we could say we were both coming out of relationships that worked perfectly to bring us together. And then the person that was leading our study group happened to be a minister who had 9 years of study on the course in front of us. So he picked up the course really early on. His name was Jean Langlois. I co-authored a book called The Yoga Mind with him. And he said, sure, I'll marry you guys, but first we got to sit down and talk about the vows. So we met over coffee, and he established the meaning, the purpose of our marriage, which is to heal. And he said there are working relationships. There are marriages that are working, and there are marriages that are asleep. And what's a marriage that's asleep, or what's a relationship that's asleep, is but when you stay together till death do you part, because you're supposed to, and then the marriage itself and the superficial goal to simply stay together in form puts you to sleep. And you put up with each other's, with the things that annoy you. You put up, and you have lots of private thoughts, and you don't express yourself. And so the marriage, in a sense, is just, it doesn't mean it's wrong, it just is not working. So he helped us really understand that the purpose of a relationship, or the purpose of a marriage, is to come together to do the yoga, to do the inner work. And we did. We tested, we worked together. We have gone through so much. We nearly divorced at one point, very, very close. And and I can say that Spirit would send someone in, or Spirit would send a message in, and would just bring us back together, and forgiveness began to just come through more and more. And now it's been 30 years. And so that's the large backdrop to the yoga. And I can say that at one point, this is kind of funny, Lori and I were driving down the street very close to where well, in South Boulder near our home. And she looked at me and she said, Jeff, she knew yoga had been such a big part of my life. And I was writing this book with Jean on the yoga mind. And she said, Jeff, if a place in South Boulder opened up that would be great for yoga, would you want to own a yoga studio? And in my mind, I quickly scanned South Boulder because I knew, the commercial buildings, I knew the area well. I couldn't see any place that would possibly work for a yoga studio. And so it was, in my head, I was saying, no, there's no good place. But my answer to her was yes. So, and that's what the universe heard. It's certainly what she heard. And literally within weeks, she found a place that I couldn't believe how the little steps came together. She even found someone who had experience running a yoga studio who was looking for a partner. This all happened within just a few weeks. And I was just shaking my head going, I can't believe this is happening, but I'm about to own a yoga studio. Never, ever had been part of my plan. And so before I knew it, we were closing on a lease for this space and going to work, hiring contractors to fix it all up. And this yoga studio was my healing ground. It was a place for me to share yoga and share my perspective, which became such a deep perspective on yoga that I had a hard time finding people that were really ready to hear what I felt like I had to say in my heart. And that was difficult. And so the yoga loft became this training ground for me to watch my words very, very carefully and forgive when something didn't line up with the way I wanted it to line up. And as a business person, you got a bottom line, you got to pay the rent, you got to pay the many employees, the other yoga teachers. And so it taught me how to really get clear and let spirit do the talking, and in a way stay out of my own way. And I made lots of mistakes that way. But it just kept refining me. And then COVID hit. I had got to this point where I was teaching. At one point for a year, I taught 24 classes a week, which is a lot of yoga for any yoga teacher. When COVID hit, I was teaching 16 classes a week, averaging about 40 people in each class. And COVID hit, and it just went away. And that's when we took everything online. And I had to watch my mind and watch myself unravel from all that, and unravel from this thing that had become my teaching ground, kind of like a sanctuary. And the many people who began to rely on the yoga and the place as a practice. Made it all the way through COVID, made it all, taught for about a year where masks were coming off, everything was coming back to life. And then there's that voice again, and the prompts kept coming in and just saying, it's time to let this space go. It's done its job, and it's time to set it aside. And I looked at lots of options and talked to lots of different people, but still that voice came through. And once I made the decision to unwind it, again, it just happened in weeks. The sale went through, everything came together, and it just unwound quickly. And in sharing this story, I can say there was doubt. There are these moments of doubt. I don't mean to make it sound like it was so whimsical and always easy, but there were times of struggle. Should I stay or should I go? Should I keep the yoga loft or should I let it go? And then I started to realize that the voice of doubt will come in all kinds of different ways. The voice of doubt will come in and with the person who says, Jeff, you got to keep teaching. We rely on you. You're good at this, blah, blah, blah. And still there's that nudge inside. So I had to really work through a lot of that and let go. And so I'm sharing that with you because I know if you're in a human body, you have dealt with these situations where you have worldly decisions to make. And sometimes the thing that we're deciding on is eating us up. It's done its job. And I look at my life in terms of chapters now, and we have to turn the page. We have to close that chapter and follow that deep intuition. And so following the deep intuition does two things. It guides us through the dream called life, but it also, these miracle moments and these miracle decisions are moments of reflection that are reinforcing the larger spiritual journey. So if I get an intuitive hit that says, do this, it's the path of joy. It may not be the easiest path, but it will be a more joyous and more fulfilling path and form. But it's important to realize that it's simply a reflection of a decision for God or for heaven that's coming through the dream. And so that's what makes the spiritual journey or our inner yoga remarkably practical. And that's why the Course says, if if you're not expecting miracles, and if miracles aren't happening, if miracles aren't occurring on a regular basis, then something has gone wrong. and so it's it's when something seems to have gone wrong and the miracle seems not to be there, that's the moment to close our eyes and reflect and pray for help and pray for an answer. And then open our eyes and open our ears and watch, look, and listen. There was a point in selling Yoga Loft where I became really excited about selling it, and I was ready to just be done. I was ready to just pull the plug, kind of no matter what it took. And I had this feeling in my heart one day when I was riding my bicycle through the CU campus, and I was kind of racing along on my bike that matched this racing idea in my head. And all of a sudden I got to this intersection where the don't walk sign came up. So I had to stop my bike. It was at a crosswalk, and I stopped. And I'm sure you guys have all heard this, but it was the first time ever in my life that I heard the audio command come through. And all it said was, wait, 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 wait. Have you heard that at a crosswalk ever? That's all it says. It doesn't say don't walk. It doesn't say stand still. It just says wait. And then so it just came through, and okay, I've got to wait. I've got to slow down. I've got to wait, and I got to stay present with my teaching. I got to stay present with the yoga studio and wait for the moment to come. And sure enough, when it came, it just unraveled very quickly. So, sometimes the intuitive hits come within, and sometimes they seem to come without, but we know the inner and outer are all the same. The mind is everywhere. And so that's the beauty of expanding our mind through this practice. We can call it yoga, we can call it whatever we want, but it's expanding the mind, listening and following. That's what it has really boiled down to for me. So I feel like I will segue into the yoga proper a little bit, but maybe I'll stop there and see if Cyndi has some comments, or see if there's any questions or comments.
Well, there are certain pieces of your yoga that have really informed my entire life. And if you want, I can hand them to you one at a time.
Why not?
Sure. So one of the first things, and it took me 2 years to really understand this, showing up every day. And it's this goal achievement. And you talk about it in almost every class, right?
Yeah.
That we're not to that there's, I think a lot of times what you say is there's 1,000 different yoga shapes between where you are now and where, like, someone who's looking to look the best is. And I didn't realize how focused I was to get to an end goal for essentially years of listening and
Yeah.
watching and going inside and realizing that, really, when we really, really slow down and get real present, every little breath and every little movement is basically an opportunity to join. And so I wonder if you want, it's the first thing that's coming up, but it was really, it's amazing how conditioning always has me looking at the to-do list and looking to cross things off. And Avita Yoga is really not that, is it?
It's not that at all. Yeah. Yeah. The whole idea of achieving anything in form, or accomplishing anything in form, is a trap, because we get caught up in doing and advancing, and we forget that we're already healed and whole. And so, you know, like I said, for thousands and thousands of years, yoga has always been about the mind. It's been about that. It's been about finding peaceful presence. Somehow, well, and I know how because I know the history of the body yoga, but we're not going to go into that now. It all got brought into form, like the ego will do with anything truly helpful. We'll pull it into form and therefore just completely diminish the true help behind it, because now we're stuck right back in the body. So let's just let alone all the different fitness paradigms that are out there, infinite number of fitness modalities. Let's just talk about yoga for a second and the yoga pose, and how most people you find your way into a yoga class, and if you can't do the yoga, then you either injure yourself trying, or you walk away from it and just go, I can't do that. It's kind of what I did as a kid with piano. I tried playing the piano. My mom wanted me to become a great piano teacher or piano player, and I couldn't do it, so I quit. And 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 yoga has become this thing that's so body centered. We have the idea of wanting to get a yoga body, whatever that is. It's usually young and fit, and it's doing something in some beautiful setting that looks almost impossible to do. So we have the whole this big image of bodies that we try to attain, let alone just walking into a class and doing some pose. So instead of accomplishing or trying to accomplish the yoga pose, what I found is if we slow way, way down and reduce yoga to its simplest forms, and we stop trying to stretch and strengthen. Avita Yoga is not a strength and stretch program. It really has to do with this kind of miraculous thing called compression and release. And if you think about it, if you've studied A Course in Miracles at all, you'll realize that compress and release is what the Course is all about. If you've read the Course, it oftentimes goes from one paragraph that talks about the compression of the ego, the way the ego compresses everything into form, and we're asked to look at the obstacles to peace. And as we look at the obstacles to peace, as we really look at them and hold them to the light, what happens? They release. So we're just taking this idea of looking at the problem as it is, holding it to the light so that it can be released. And where do most problems in the body, I'm not going to say where do they originate, but we could say what is the source of most problems is at the level of the bones. People go into the hospital, we go into surgery to get joint replacements, not muscle replacements. So if we target the bones, now we can utilize this thing called compression, and we can move toward any given shape and find the perfect amount of compression that is both healing and does not take our peace away. Am I on track here, Cyndi? Is this kind of...
You could keep going. I was just looking at moving. I was going to ask you about pain in next. I want to couch that, but go for it. So
I figured we'd do some shapes. I don't call them yoga poses because pose implies accomplishment. It implies performance. And this is yoga you can almost always do with your eyes closed. This is my yoga studio. It's where I practice. It's where I teach and share from. And we approach the shapes in a way where you can find healing sensations. So here's a shape that you can all do. Hold up your right hand okay? And who doesn't get a little sensation in the first joint of their first finger because of mousing or because of typing or moving around a trackpad or something like that, right? So, sooner and later, and this is where I like to share the George Jetson story. Did you ever see the Jetsons when you were a kid? Where, wasn't it Jane, the wife? Jane, she went to the doctor because she had all this inflammation in her hands and her fingers. This is long before we really knew about carpal tunnel syndrome and things like that. I was 8 years old watching this stuff. And I remember this one episode where Jane goes to the doctor and she's complaining about this pain in her hand, her fingers, and the doctor says, Jane, you have buttonitis. Raise your hand if you've got some buttonitis. I do. And so, but here's how you can resolve it. Compress and release. So you're just going to take your first finger, and you can do this with all your fingers, but you just take your first finger, and then you take your other hand and you assist by using your other pointer finger to compress all those joints in your first finger. And you'll see they start to turn a little bit white, and you feel the compression. And if you have arthritis in there, is your shape going to look like this one? No, it might look like that. So here's where the healing happens. Here's the power. You don't try to accomplish the shape like what Cyndi was saying. You don't try to make it look like mine. You do the yoga until you start to feel the pain. Oh, there's the pain that terrifies me. I'm afraid of having arthritis in my finger. Okay, stop. But don't come out of it. Stay in the place where it's doable. That's a word I use a lot. Every shape has to be doable, which means it's sustainable. And you can spend a minute, minute and a half here, which is how long it takes to stimulate the natural healing physiology in your body. And that's a whole nother story. You have physiology that just needs to be stimulated that will remodel, clean up, and resolve arthritis and degeneration. And that's the target of this practice, which is why most of the people who are drawn to it are over 40. And so, in short, we want to be able to flex and extend every joint in our body fully, both actively and passively. They're two different qualities completely. So we just passively. Now, I can almost promise you that if you have arthritic sensation, and now there's no doubt, the sooner you catch it, the better. But if you have arthritis or pain or feelings of degeneration in your fingers, your thumbs, in various joints, 3-4 times a week, when you find yourself watching a movie, you're a passenger in somebody's car, you have these passive moments. You can keep doing everything you're doing, and you can just work your way through each finger for about a minute and a half or 2 minutes. That's all it takes. Now, the other secret ingredient is, well, there are no secrets, I'm fully transparent here. The other transparent ingredient is when you release the shape, you don't shake it out, you don't freak out, you don't worry, you don't start getting afraid again. When it's time to release, you just release. And you may be slow to straighten it out. Because if you shake it out or try to do something about it, guess what? You just got in your own way. You just interfered with the healing process. How many times do we try to fix and interfere with other people's lives as well as our own? How many times have you heard some great teacher say, we just got to get out of our way? And that's what makes this yoga so powerful, is that we can close our eyes. We can go into these shapes and have a firsthand experience of moving into the very thing that we're afraid of, which is what the course is all about. We have to turn and look at the thing we're running from. It's the moment we do that is the moment the shadow turns to light. As we turn and look with love in our hearts, with love by our side. And that can be scary. But that's working through the fear. All right. So that's what we have here. We come into these shapes, and as you discern the difference between what's outright pain and what is healing sensation, that's the skill you learn. There's only one skill you learn in Avita Yoga, and it's discerning the difference between outright pain and healing sensation. And healing sensation can be a little bit frightening, a little painful right at the beginning, but then you can sustain it. You can stay there and go, oh, wow, that's actually a bit nourishing. That's not as scary as I thought it was. All the while, the physiology is, everything is getting reprogrammed. You're getting rewired. The conditioning is being undone. Patterns in our bodies and our minds start to get unwound. And then you release, and we may pause, we may rest, we may go right into another shape or another finger. And so back to the principles of Course in Miracles and Avita Yoga, what does the Course ask us to do but look at the fear? We have to look at the fear. We have to identify the fearful thought behind the emotions, the fearful thought behind the things in form. To look at it with love by our side, forgive it, and let it go. And what a beautiful thing to be able to practice that so intimately with our bodies. And then the byproduct of the practice is, wow, I move better. My hips are more free now. My knees, you can resolve knee issues, hip issues. So instead of trying to accomplish some yoga pose, which quite honestly gets us nowhere, we really target joints. We target the hips, we target the knees, and we have shapes that lead us into the resistance, which in the end is always futile. We bump into the resistance and dissolve it. So there, we all did some yoga.
So well, you answered one of my questions, which was healing sensation versus pain. But the other part of this, Michael Singer has taught me to, if I want to heal, get used to discomfort, right? Especially in the beginning of my practice. So much of what you've taught me is how to use the body to get to the mind to allow the healing, but we're going through a lot of congestion, right? A lot of trauma, a lot of wounds, a lot of congestion. And especially in those first months of my practice, I would move into a shape that seems like nothing, and I'd get really nauseous. I'd get dizzy. I'd get exhausted. What do you want to comment on a little bit of that? Because especially, I don't know how often we walk away from those sensations that are uncomfortable. But for me, they just represented that, all this crap is in my body. I'm ready to let it go. And I slept through it or walked through it or whatever. But if you could talk, especially that nauseous feeling. Sometimes I would
Yeah.
just hit a shape and I would feel like something toxic just got released.
Yes. Well, okay. So I'm sure you've all seen images of an arthritic joint. If you just go online and do a search for arthritis and then click images, you'll see all kinds of diagrams and images of arthritis, and it's always scary looking. And we see things in there, and the moment we find out we have some sort of severe degeneration, usually we just want to get it out, right? And that's the ego's quick fix. Just get it out of me. Okay, but we're going to use the shapes, and we're going to use time to unwind and undo, not just to get mobility. If we just target and say, I just want mobility alone, I want to move my knee again like I did when I was 20. Okay, you may end up with that result, but you're missing all the yoga and all the cleansing along the way. We do take small steps and oftentimes have these amazing big outcomes, but the steps are small and they're very consistent. And so when we enter in to any kind of degenerated area, we're going to stir things up. We stir it up, and there could be toxins in these joints. There could be memories in these joints. One of the things I left out of my story is that along the way, I became a Rolfer, which is a form of body work where you learn to use your hands to undo restrictions in connective tissue to help people stand up taller, move better, walk better, just to feel better in their bodies. And it wasn't, but probably once a week, I would be working with someone and my hands would be in their body, and they would have a memory come up, and sometimes they would smell tobacco, for example. They hadn't smoked a cigarette in many years, but all of a sudden they could smell tobacco because of my hands were doing a work around their shoulder or around their rib cage. I remember once I even thought I smelled it. And so anytime we really go into the healing process, there's going to be cleansing. We could think of this yoga as washing and rinsing the joints, but the higher yoga of the mind is washing and rinsing the mind. And so yes, it's not going to be uncommon in the physical yoga or the yoga of the mind to get nauseous. Figuratively speaking, we want to throw it up. It's just this constant idea of giving it up, not giving it up like throwing in the towel, which is what the ego would want, but literally identifying the restrictions so clearly and giving it up where it can be dissolved. And so that's the whole premise with the body, because it's the premise with the mind. Sometimes, like Cyndi mentioned, it can be nauseating. It can also be emotional. And what can I say about the emotional process with the yoga is that as a teacher, and this is what I teach the teachers to do, we simply hold the container without filling it up. We hold the container and we provide the cues and we provide the guidance, because we're all, teacher and student, we're all moving toward the light together. And so we hold the container, and when an emotion comes up or a memory comes up, there are oftentimes tears. And that's why I have in the classroom lots of Kleenex boxes just laying around, and I teach the teachers that's really the extent of our therapy, is to hold the container, let whatever needs to come up, and then we're there with the box of tissue, and then we just go back to holding the container. If some words need to be shared after class, or if some words need to be shared or expressed, then we simply listen. And we listen with the love and the light in our hearts, because that's what we are, and that's our practice. So again, we try to stay out of this fix-it mode as both teachers and students, and let spirit do the healing. If we try to fix it, then we're going to interrupt the healing process. And it's healing that we want. There's a difference between healing and fixing. So yeah, and so Cyndi, what you shared and what you courageously endured of working through that, you trusted that, I don't think you shared much of that while you were going with me. I heard you sharing it after you went through it. And there's not much I could do but encourage you to stay with it, to keep practicing, to pace yourself so you don't throw up too much all at once. And we do use the wall a lot. We put our legs up on the wall, which reverses the effects of gravity on the legs and the body, all that we have all day long. And we do work with the feet and the knees in this inverted shape. So we're encouraging the toxins to be released, to get into the lymphatic system and get cleansed by the liver, and it just gets cleansed and recycled. It really is kind of a form of hygiene for the bones and joints.
One of the things you taught me, and it happens in almost every one of my sessions, where somewhere, either around my heart, around my lungs, and my digestive system, it will start to gurgle.
Yeah.
Like the whole air bubble gurgling thing. And you've taught me that that's just the parasympathetic system being turned on. And so I know healing's happening, and it gets real
Yeah.
exciting. I
Yeah.
have one other question before whatever else you want to share, or to open it up for questions. But another key thing I learned through this practice is I've had lots of direct experience, and you talk about it a lot. And all of our non-dual and Course in Miracles teachings teach the same thing. Pain and the problem, they're never in the same place, are they?
Mm.
And
Mm-mm.
so anything you'd like to share about that?
Oh, Cyndi, what a great question. Yeah. So what is the pain but a messenger? The pain is just telling you that something is just not quite right. But it's never the problem. And the entire, well, I shouldn't say, I'll say that most of the world and a lot of the medical community has made pain the problem. And we've gotten really, really good at getting rid of it. We can cut the pain out. We can snip the nerves. You can snip them. You can laser them, and you can interrupt the pain message. In the greater context of life, we have everything from Advil, aspirin, to alcohol, drugs, morphine, prescription things. And there is a massive not over the counter, but prescription painkiller problem in America. I just noticed recently these Netflix movies that are kind of going into the whole story of how painkillers have become so status quo. And doctors, the amount of time that they actually spend in learning about pain management is extremely small compared to the amount of time they learn how to fix things. And so they don't, if they've sort of done their job, they've kind of exhausted their resources. And sometimes they'll send people to physical therapy, or maybe even to a yoga class. All that said, if we're not careful, we end up shooting the messenger. And that's the metaphor of when things are dire enough, you know, and the messenger in the battle situation comes and says to the general, he says, you know, it's not looking good. The bridges have been burned. The enemy's coming in with more and more troops. You know, it's not looking good. And so what does the general do? But shoots the messenger. And it's actually not only not addressing the problem, but now you've just lost the relay. You've just lost the information. And so in Avita Yoga, we really relish that information. We use it because we're constantly using the pain and following it. Up, too painful, too strong. Come out of the shape a little bit, reduce some pressure. Ah, yeah, there. Now it's sustainable. Now I can be with it. All right. Do we push for more? No. We stay in that sustainable place. We wait. We finish the class. We come back a couple days later and do another class. They're always different. And so I think of the pain as like a cookie crumb trail, like Hansel and Gretel dropping little cookie crumbs to find their way home. The pain will lead us home. Because it was Ida Rolf, that's when I first heard it. Ida Rolf said, the pain and the problem are never in the same place. In acute situations, yes, you stub your toe or you drop a rock on your toe. Yeah, the pain is right there. But if that toe gets broken and you don't get it cast correctly or get it set correctly, then that toe is going to lead to compensation patterns, and it's going to push problems into the knee and into the hip. And then see how convoluted it all becomes. If we didn't start following the pain into the knee and into the hip, and then eventually down into the foot and down into the toe, if we didn't want to unwind all that, we'd get nowhere. We'd be stuck in the pattern that's working against us. Is that any different than not wanting to look at the pain in our hearts and minds? No. And so what do? We reach for drugs, we reach for alcohol, we reach for distractions. Some people have travel addictions. We'll play games. We'll just, whatever it takes to disrupt the pain and avoid looking at it, instead of sitting down with somebody that really can listen. Like spirit, and that's why we would have a moving meditation like Avita Yoga. That's why we would have a meditation in the first place, to just sit quietly and start letting the pain come to the surface. Because at the root of all the pain and at the root of all the suffering, just like the Buddha said, there's joy. We just got to get to the bottom of it. That answer your question, Cyndi? Did I get it?
Yes. Oh, and just confirming, Melissa, that it answered yours. So you ready to take some questions, Jeff? Crazy that we've been hanging for an hour already. So
yeah.
Anyone has any questions for Jeff? There's a
All
question.
right. Well, the hands
Jill?
are going up. Hey, Jill.
Hey, Jeff. Good to see
Hi.
your face to face.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I've been doing Avita for about a month and a half. Mostly, I am going to the retreat, so I thought, you know what, I really should try this. And I had such a resistance to yoga in general. I had done hot yoga and a couple of yoga classes, and it was super hard. Just feeling like I can't do that pose. And even just exercise in general. I I like to horseback ride. I like to do hiking, fun things. But if it's like a scheduled thing, like it's not been fun. So it's been very interesting. And I'm absolutely loving it. The shapes are amazing. The legs up the wall. And I do see like huge resistance when I'm feeling pain. Like, this isn't okay. Like, I have this like programming that pain isn't okay. Like, I'm gonna, hurt myself. And I have to giggle because a lot of times, like, I'll be in a pose and you'll say, "Oh, you might notice shaking in your muscles. Good. Feel into that." Like, but this isn't okay. My muscle's shaking. And then noticing though, when I allow myself to be with that uncomfortableness, there's peace there. And it's just starting to feel like a spiritual practice, which I love. I'm all about the, meditation, the spiritual practices, but I haven't really seen how yoga fits into that puzzle. But yeah, I'm really, really enjoying it. So much. I just wanted to thank you for that. And yeah, I'm
So
kind of
good to see
new.
your face. Yeah, we've emailed back and forth quite a bit, kind of dialing your practice in. Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
I'm
Well,
excited. I'm
yeah,
excited for it and excited to keep doing the poses. And what I did experience, Cindy, was like this detox. And I think I even emailed you, Jeff, like, oh my gosh, I feel sick. Like there was just this detox in just the one time, actually, the very first time.
Hmm.
And then I'd be like, oh, I'm going to be sore tomorrow. And then I'd feel a little bit, but and what I did notice, Jeff, you might find this funny. I've been doing the 1.0 series,
Yep.
and somewhere along the line, it was just you and your wife. And that
Oh, yeah.
one was so hard. I thought, and she's such, really, really good at yoga as well. So the next day I felt that one, but no,
Yeah.
I'm just really loving it. So thank you.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So we do have the green classes and we have orange classes. And the formula that's really seemed to work at the yoga studio over those 10 years was I would teach green classes all week, which are less muscular effort, more doable. But then on Sunday, I would teach these orange classes where I would everything in my heart and mind, they're still doable. It's a lot of them are still the same shapes, but we take a little more dynamic approach to them. And so yeah, that's when the muscles will start to shake and you do that, but they're super, super safe, as and you can always come out of the shape if it starts to be too much, that's fine. You just want to come back for another day, and it's really helpful to be able to laugh at it and just smile at it, and go, oh, okay, these muscles. And even cramps and spasms and things like that, that's just the ego short-circuiting the healing process. So we learn to do the cramp dance and we start to gently ride these things out, and the undoing just can't help but happen. Yeah. So
I
it'll be fun to see you in person in La Vita. Yeah, which is where
you-
Avita got part of its name. Isn't that funny? All right. Was there another question?
Melissa's got her hand up. Should we let her talk?
Sure.
It's not really a question after what Jill had to share. That was amazing. Thank you, Jill. That was absolutely amazing. I love how you shared all of that. And Jeff, you really changed my thinking to what yoga is all about. And Cyndi, you're probably to blame for some of that because my internet's unstable. I'm going to shut my video off. See
Okay.
if that helps. Because you just love yoga so much. So, and I never I never made the mind-body connection. And I just got all of that right here with you. So I really appreciate that. And I have some super serious issues going on with both hands now, that I can't open things, and I can shovel, and my body is doing what it needs to do to survive in this house we live in, which we get a lot of snow. We live upriver, up north in Washington, and it's a lot of work, just firewood, snow, shoveling. And both my hands are just all cramped. And when I wake up in the middle of the night, I can feel them. And just hearing you talk about the movements of the shapes, and to look at it, just to look at it without fear, is just a beautiful practice, and just really opened my eyes. So I appreciate that. And I look forward to, I'm really glad that you did this satsang. Thank you, Cyndi. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Melissa.
So,
Yeah. So
hey, Jeff. Oh,
yeah.
I was just gonna suggest that we talk about pain and the problem not being in the same place, and for whatever reason, I'm just getting this hit. And if you want to talk about it, I wouldn't be surprised if some of this wasn't coming from Melissa's shoulders. And can you talk
Oh,
about how all that
yeah,
is
right.
connected?
Well, yeah, we've heard that over the years, right? We know it's all connected, but it takes kind of an intimate inner approach to realize and find the connections. That's what we've got to do, is find the blockage that's somewhere, maybe in the wrist, the elbow, the forearm, even in the upper arm muscles and the shoulder, like Cyndi said. Problems in the fingers and hands, and the way we start to use our hands impact the way we use the shoulder, and vice versa. We make these accommodations around the pain. So we move around the pain just to do whatever it is we need to accomplish in any given day. And I can relate. I'm here in Minnesota, where we're dealing with lots of cold temperatures right now, and plenty of, well, not as much snow shoveling this year, but lots of firewood cutting. And so we want to, we always use the shapes to source the patterning behind them. And the patterning can feed into all kinds of other parts of the body. That's what it gets to. And so, if you go to Avita Yoga online, you'll see a section there called featured workshops. And I have these very affordable workshops that you can do. There's a knee workshop, hips, there's a balancing workshop, but there's a shoulder. There's one for the shoulders. And you might really appreciate that particular workshop, because there's some nice handwork mixed in with it, and you'll start to probably unwind some stuff in your shoulder that makes your hand feel better. So
The other thing that Melissa mentioned, Jeff, and it's interesting because I just within the last 2 weeks, yeah. But first, Laura, yeah, I was just going to talk about whether or not Avita really is yoga by what most people think yoga is.
yeah. No, I've had people say, why do you call it yoga? Why don't you just call it Avita? And it has to do with the story I just shared. I think it's more yoga than yoga. So how can I not call it yoga?
Laura Joy.
Hey, thank you. Oh, I'm just so loving this. Thank you. Thank you both.
Love the lotus, Joy. That's a beauty.
Isn't that cool? I'm not sure where I got that, maybe from Mac or somewhere. So I love that you're talking so much about the pain piece, and the way the vibration, this concealed bliss, like you said, sorry if I'm not being particularly articulate, I want to formulate this properly, is that underneath this resistance to even looking at whatever blocks our awareness of this astounding presence and love that we are. And just how does it address, and I think you've probably answered this, but just for my way of thinking, the fear of, it's like there's so much intensity of this light, and if I don't even know if it's a fear of looking, but it's like so intense that it causes a restlessness. And I feel like what you're talking about could really address that. I do something called Satya Yoga, which is different but similar in some ways, I think. But I feel like I really still need to get to this layer of vibrational discomfort, fear, without having so much fear around it. Can you answer that or respond to that in some way?
Yeah. Yeah. Is the vibrational discomfort, does it seem like it's just part of every moment of every day mostly? Is it always there, or is it tend to show up when you slow down? Can you say a little bit more about when you feel it?
Yeah, well, it feels like this astounding love. Like there's
Oh,
no question. But there's like this belief, there's still like this belief stuck in there around unworthiness or something, and I'm like, I wonder if these compression moves, because I do some of that intuitively, but not, I think, to the degree that you're talking about, which I'm really excited about. And but I'll still find myself kind of getting restless. And I've shared about the vibrational awareness for a long time, and now I'm just so excited because people are talking about it so much.
yeah.
Feel like, I'm still in that process of even letting just these subtle layers deep within the mind that are either protecting something or afraid they're going to find something, that's really, really bad, and intellectually, I understand this completely, and even vibrationally and direct experience of that incredible bliss, but it's not sustained yet. There's still a fear even of fully expressing how much light passes through this vehicle. So
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So it sounds like it almost sounds like the love and the vibration of the love and light is so available. It's so right there for you. And 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 maybe the ego is naturally terrified of it. So the ego comes in very, very close to it and layers right in there with its own resistance that kind of comes through in moments of anxiety. Is that is that
yeah, that could be part of it. That it's that, I think, just a fear, like literally a fear of being crucified,
okay?
like by others or by the world, but also the one, and I've been working with it for so long, and I still find frustration because I haven't been able to completely transcend, is when the mind will go outward and really think that someone else has done something wrong.
Okay.
And it's that kind of thing where you feel like really, really justified. And I know that that's looking straight at the desire for self-righteousness, or, but it seems, so it's just a constant, like, okay, I'm not going to let that into the mind, but the vibrational piece of that still hasn't released.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess, deep down, I feel like it's the same fear we all have, Joy. I think it's deep down, ultimately, we're all terrified of the love and the light. We're afraid of it. And, and anytime we relate to the body, we try to find pleasure with the body, or we try to take care of the body in and of itself and not use the body to point in the right direction, that does nothing but bring up more guilt. And so the fear associated with it. And so I mean, I can look back on my life and see lots of times where the love and the light just seems so available. And then sure enough, something would come in, either in my immediate environment or some piece of news or something would come in that would pull me away from that. And that's exactly what the ego's game plan. It does not want us to get close to the love, and ultimately it wants us to, ultimately our spiritual process, we want to start to realize that it's not the fear out there that we're concerned about, that we're really afraid of. It's the fear of the love. And you probably, I think we're kind of intellectualizing it, and you probably are familiar with all that. So what can I say about the practice? What could be helpful? Slowing down. Slowing down. And the nice thing about the Avita Yoga practice, just putting your legs up on the wall. For example, here, you guys don't have to do a thing. I'll demonstrate a simple shape here, and you can follow along in your heart and mind. And I'll just show you how simple it can be. Legs up on the wall. We always give enough space between you and the wall so the knees can extend passively without any effort. So I'm well away from the wall. We generally support the head. It's very comfortable. Okay, this is one of the most healing yoga shapes I know. You just have to have a pillow and a little bit of wall space. And then we might just be here right now for a moment, and you feel the passive extension on your knees. How often do your knees get to extend without any effort? Pretty rarely. So they get to extend. The effects of gravity get turned upside down. This natural cleansing starts to happen. And imagine if we started doing a little bit of work with the feet and the toes. All right. So we might, well, we in fact often open the class just like this. Then we might say, now bring the right knee toward the right shoulder, interlock your fingers behind the knee, close your eyes, and feel the fold of your hip. I'm talking about the hip joint way down here. You feel the compression on the hip. You feel the passive flexion on the knee. This is flexion of the knee. On my left, it's extending. So I close my eyes and I sink into the shape. And I feel, and I look with my eyes closed. That's the proprioception, and that's figuratively, that's true vision. We don't see with our eyes, we see with our hearts. And then in this moment, here and now, Joy, I wait and I watch and I feel. Where's the anxiety now? Is it going to show up? Will it show up? And if it does, I welcome it. And here's one of my favorite mantras. I'm just going to speak the mantra out loud that I say to myself. Anytime a grievance or a judgment or a worry or a fear about something outside of me that's seemingly going to attack me or whatever, here it is. Hello, old friend. Thanks, but no thanks. Hello, anxiety. I know you. You know, you've been around for quite a while now, but I'm ready for a better way. Thanks, but no thanks. See, and then there's a minute and a half or two on that leg, and then we might go to the other one. And we sink into the shape. And now we let the extension come into the right knee. We let that leg release, and we let the effects of the inversion benefit this leg. Sink into the left hip. And here it is again, you know. Let's just say it's a little bit of arthritis in the knee or some little pinch in the hip. Ah, hello. Hello, old friend. I just envisioned shaking hands with what I thought was a problem. And now I befriend the problem. Hello, old friend. Thank you. You've played your part. You've done your thing. I'm ready for a new chapter. I'm going for a better way. And then we release that heel up on the wall. And I'll just give you an idea here about how we use the strap. So I might put the strap on the ball of the foot and the heel back up on the wall, and I hold the strap high. Now, I think it was Melissa that had the issue in her fingers and her hands. This is work for the hands and the shoulders right here. It doesn't look like it. But if you just use your foot as a sling for your shoulders, you'll feel tension start to show up in the shoulders, because what do? We have to hold, we're used to holding the shoulders up, and we're used to all this tension around the neck. And it keeps us from using our hands appropriately and fully. If our shoulders are wrapped up around the neck, we can't really use our hands properly. So we practice using the hands and dropping the shoulders. Now the fingers and the hands and the thumbs are going to freak out now, because they're working all alone, right? There's no tension in the shoulder to support them. And so that's happening automatically. But we might throw the ego a bone and say, okay, now flex your ankle, bring your toes towards you. Firm your thigh, straighten your knee. See, you can't see me doing those things. They're so small, but I can sure feel them. And I can sure feel the result of my using the muscles to get to my bones and undo the trauma and the past in my heart and mind. And I just hang here. And I reside in the thought, and I reside in the memory, and I reside in the emotions, and I reside in the healing sensation. So I'm using the shape, and I'm using my body, and I'm using my muscles to ultimately heal my heart and mind. That is the goal of every single shape. And because of that goal is so strong and so profound, you do not need to advance the shape and make it, quote unquote, look better in order to feel better. And so that's why with every single shape in every single class, and what I teach the Avita Yoga teachers, we have to find a shape that lets us into the body and into the heart and into the mind, so we can interrupt the pain cycle. So once we're caught in the pain cycle, it's vicious and very, very circular. But if we can start to slow down, it's a moving meditation. So we do need to slow down, and we find a way in, we find an entry point. And once we intercept the pain cycle and we welcome everything. See, when's the last time you welcomed that which we're always trying to get rid of? See, that's the miracle. We look at it differently and we welcome the thing we're trying to eliminate. Sometimes we don't even know what we're trying to eliminate. We're just trying to eliminate, which is like, shooting at a target in a blackened room, right? So we just create this environment to enter into the healing cycle, which I define in the yoga practice as using the muscles to get to the bones. And then we use the bones to get to the nervous system and the mind. And that starts to create this undoing. We're just undoing the restrictions and the blockages and the patterns that keep us in the pain cycle and keep us in the fear cycle. And I study the course daily. I do the lessons every day. I dive in, and I'm just continually finding nuances and subtle ways to bring that course into the body, into a physical practice, which anybody who studied the course knows there's plenty in there that say, don't make the body real, because it's not. But yoga is a way that can align with the principles of the course, as long as we're in our function of forgiveness. There is a continual undoing that I find to be remarkably helpful. And if it weren't for that spiritual component, I would have nothing to do with this, because I'm not interested in making my body better. I'm interested in healing my mind. That's what brings me back time and time again.
So it's pretty cool. 88 minutes of the 90 have been used. It's been phenomenal. Right. And Glenn's got his hand up. Should we?
All right, let's take it.
Close with Glenn's comment or question or whatever
these
last 2 minutes?
Thank you for that opportunity. To be brief, Course in Miracles fan, love it. Yoga changed my life. I now stand up straight. There's the doctor said I added almost an inch and a quarter to my height. I stooped my whole life. So it does heal. I way lapsed practice. How do you begin? What would your advice be to be beginning a practice again? Because I've had the Holy Spirit telling me, well, in this form, we'll call it the Holy Spirit, telling me to do 3 sun salutations every morning, and I just can't get there. Just can't get there. Yeah. How would you advise us begin?
Yeah, just like this. I'd let the sun salutations go. I just let them go completely. And like I tell all my students, as well as myself, the advances in the shape, the advances in the body will come as pleasant surprises. The advances in form, the increased height, the increased mobility, the deepening of any posture, if that's what we want to call it, comes as a byproduct of the inner work. So never, and this goes back to Cyndi's very first question. Never are we trying to advance the pose or the body. And this gentle undoing. I've had students back when I was teaching in the yoga in the studio, they've been a student now for 1.5 years, 2 years, and they'd come up to me after class and say, "Oh my God, Jeff, I thought I bumped into somebody. I thought you walked by and kicked me." And I said, "Really?" I said, "What happened?" And she goes, "My head hit the floor." After 1.5 years of doing Sukhasana, curving forward, her head finally touched the floor, and her eyes have been closed time after time after time. She had no awareness that her body was really advancing like that. That's what we want. And that's a beautiful thing. So, you know, you can go to the website, Glenn, and there are free introductory videos you can do that will point you in the right direction. And you may choose one of the workshops, even if you want to target a body part. Those are really nice ways to get started. You could just do this simple thing. Legs up on the wall, bring your knee to your chest, put the strap around the ball of your foot. The whole thing takes about 10-15 minutes. And just see how you feel. You know, it's super simple, but it's super profound. I could talk more, but I think we hit our limit.
We've done our 90 minutes, Jeff, and this has been fabulous from me and all of us at Awakening Together. I just want to say thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Cyndi. Thank you, everyone. That was fun.
Thank you for watching our satsang. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to join us live, please remember you can do so by visiting our website at awakening-together.org. We'd love to see you in the sanctuary. Again, our website is awakening-together.org. Remember to click the bell for more notifications and subscribe.